And I also forgot to mention from my last video, I know a lot of unbelievers don't understand this, but please, anyone who's hurting, learn to love your pain because God will, you know, can get the glory in the end because pain and suffering has a purpose in God's eyes. And pain and suffering builds character, gives us wisdom, understanding, perspective, empathy for others. It allows us to live in empathy with others and allows us to humble ourselves to see other people's perspectives. And a lot of the time, people who are condemning and stuff, they don't have as much empathy because maybe they think that they made all the right choices or they have a holier than thou type of attitude. It's kind of like a Pharisee mindset. And what I'm trying to say to people who are suffering, suffering can be so beautiful, and God is going to use all of your suffering for good because, like I said, it allows us to humble ourselves and be able to empathize with others and have love in our hearts for others and see others and understand others. You know, it gives us perspective, godly perspective. If you're suffering, with God and under God's sovereignty. And another thing I want to say is usually if you're like truly saved by Jesus Christ, I mean truly, truly saved, you went through a lot of suffering in your past. Usually someone who has a lot of money and had a perfect life doesn't really get saved by Jesus because why would they need Jesus? They have everything on their earth that they feel they need. And that's why so many, it even talks about this in the Bible. Like Jesus said, it is easier for a rich person to get it's easier for a camel to go through the point of a needle, something like that, than it is for a rich person to get into heaven. Because getting into heaven is someone who's gone through suffering, who has empathy for the poor, who understands life in terms of a godly perspective and from a godly point of view, isn't condemning, isn't looking down on others, isn't proud, isn't arrogant. Someone who gets into heaven has a completely different mindset than the world. And someone who's in heaven embraces their suffering because they realize if they didn't suffer so much and if they didn't have the heart that they did, Jesus would have never found them. When you have suffering and in this life, you are Jesus is. Okay, like when you suffer, you are part of Jesus's kingdom. You are part of God's kingdom. Not everyone who suffers, but a lot of people, if you truly suffer, you know what suffering is. You have a big heart. You've been betrayed by people. You've been through the ringer. Things have not always worked out for you. You usually are the person that is found by Jesus, not the person over there flaunting their riches and thinking they got it going on. Why would they need Jesus? So please, anyone who's suffering, understand that suffering can be so beautiful if you see it through the perspective of God and not through the perspective of the world. You are perfect. Not perfect. You're not perfect. I didn't mean to say that. You're not perfect. But we're sinners. And someone who's truly found Jesus knows that we are not perfect. We are sinners. Before we found Jesus, we were dead in sin. And with this new life that God and Jesus has given us, there's a whole world of possibilities. Do not let anyone condemn you for your past, your sufferings. That's the devil's job. That's not God. Anyone who's condemning you for your past and all of your previous mistakes, that's not God. So, let's just remember, suffering has a purpose. Not all suffering comes from God, but it can a lot of the time. And it's truly, so you can glorify God in the end and be a better prophet, apostle, kingdom worker, whoever, because only someone who's truly suffered and has a huge heart can truly be a benefit to the kingdom and understand God and his ways. So remember that. Love you.